which made the whole shed rain. He lugged the bottles out into the sun. The heat from the grill caused the air to thicken all around him, making him sweat as if he were in a sauna. He laid the bottles down next to his workstation and remembered to set them down gently, as it was highly acidic and could melt through anything except for plastic. He breathed a sigh of relief. His work was almost done. His dad went inside and returned a moment later with 4 knives. "Are you going to do the dishes after?" Christian said. "Now, you need 3 different knives to cut the meat," Epi said. "You have 4. You need 1 knife for trimming, you use another one for carving until it starts to get dull, then you switch to the other. You need a backup, o ya te chingastes. Do not use the same knife for carving and trimming. The 4th is for cutting the meat after you are done. Recuerda, es mejor hacerlo bien la primera vez. El flojo trabaja doble." Right. Seems like that takes too long. Pues sí, güey, anything worthwhile takes a while. Haha, yeah, that rhymed. He had a little chuckle at that. Christian had to admit he loved these moments with his dad. He never got to do anything with him anymore. The trouble between his mother and father kept them both on edge. He had hardly seen his dad in the last few years, not since his best friend Tony passed. But he secretly loved it when his dad invited himself over just to lecture him. He felt as if it was his dad's way of saying, "I miss you, son." He fixed the tarp that had shifted with a gust of wind. "Does the wind affect this in any way?" Christian said as he flattened out the tarp again. "Not at all. The flat top covers most of the area below. It'll just play with the fire a bit, but nothing to worry about," Epi said. "Not what I was referring to, but never mind. Did you bring the chainsaw?" His dad nodded to the back of the shed, indicating where he had put it, keeping his eyes on the meat as if he were babysitting a child. Christian walked the perimeter of the shed until he spotted what he needed. The chainsaw lay flat on the ground as if just dumped there in haste. An axe stood beside it, which gave Christian an idea. The handle of the axe was hot to the touch, and he had to palm it for a few seconds before he could pick it up and swing it over his shoulder. He walked back to the hole, brandishing the axe as the blade caught the sun, blinding his dad for a second. He brought the axe around. Its implications weighed heavily in his hands as he hoisted it above his head, nodding to his dad, wincing as he waited for his rejection. Instead, his dad nodded, and Christian could see a smile form on his dad's face that was quickly covered up by the smoke of the grill. See, a perfectly clean grill does not let the meat stick. Cuando haces las cosas bien, todo sale bien. Todo trabaja toda madre. He took some meat off and began to slice it. With every slice, he carved the meat into beautiful pieces, like a painter effortlessly gliding the brush along his canvas. This may take a while, but what matters is doing it right. That we can control. Hay tantas cosas en este mundo que no podemos controlar, mijo. Puede que trabajes lo más duro posible, ames lo más que puedas, y seas la mejor versión de ti mismo, pero aún así no será suficiente. No puedes culparte a ti mismo, y Dios sabe que yo no te juzgaré. ¿Por qué debería? Puede que no sea perfecto, pero esto, he pointed at the grill before him, esto sí es perfecto. And Christian smiled as his dad flipped the carne asada onto a plate and sliced again. He imagined what it would be like if his dad were not here, or if his mother were here too. They wouldn't be talking, just sitting in the sun, baking into the bitter people they had become. He walked over to the garden bed where the hole was. It was perfect. He smiled and turned as he heard the gate creak open. "Hey, compadre!" Epi reached out to the man that had come through the gate, an old friend that had once meant a lot to Epi, but had over time become a stranger that was almost unrecognizable to him. Christian began to tremble as he eyed the axe once more. Only this time, he knew he'd have to use it. The man was taller than Christian thought. He began to worry even more now, but his dad looked as calm as anyone could underneath the relentless sun. It was hard to hide your true intentions, but his dad must have had classes. He looked back at Christian, and his aged skin comforted him in this moment. It was as if he had waited his entire life to pass on this moment to his son. Christian thought back to when he was little, when they would throw the ball around. His dad was always so strict and made spending time with him a chore. He never once thought back to his childhood memories and smiled. Instead, he thought back to all the times his dad scolded him for throwing a pitch wrong, all the lectures he got about being a man. He thought about all the wasted conversations they had, not knowing how the other felt, but still able to hurl insults and fists at each other. He thought about all the days his father must have lived and how they shaped him into the man he'd become. Christian thought about the youthful gaze he once had and remembered thinking that he wished one day he'd grow up to have a son and really do right by him. He wondered if at any moment in time his dad ever really loved him, or if he simply felt he had an obligation to love. Then Epi grabbed the axe and smiled at the hole Christian had made. "Hey, Christian, how's it going?" His dad's friend, Hans, waved at him. Christian faced his father, waiting for a word or a hint, but Epi just looked at him as if he had never once set eyes on him before. "How's your wife, Lato?" Hans spoke up, interrupting the peace that had fallen upon Christian and his father. "Good," he responded, never once breaking eye contact with his son. "But you already knew that, right?" Epi smiled at Christian again, the way a loving father would, and turned to Hans. Christian turned away. He glanced back at the grill that had started to smoke. "The meat is burning," Christian said. He stared at the grill as it continued to smoke and permeate heat, while his father made his way toward his old friend. Christian shut his eyes. The guttural scream was masked only by the sound of the sizzling meat burning in the deep Texas heat.